And we are back. Welcome back into the Pigskin Cafe. My name is Hampton Sipper, and I will be your host this evening. And joining me tonight to talk a little college football, Week 6 recap and preview Week 7 is the correspondent at large himself, Graham Haney. Graham, how we doing tonight, man?
Doing good. I mean, as of right now, when we're recording this, the Atlanta Braves and the Philadelphia Phillies are playing Game 2 of the NLDS. Hope it goes better than Game 1 for sure. And in Nashville today, weather was awful, so I
Yeah,
made it
y'all had some
home
tornado
alive and
warnings,
dry.
didn't you?
Yeah, tornado warnings, tornado watches. I was kind of surprised, but that doesn't stop our conversation from happening. The Pigskin Cafe is still going to happen. We're still going to gather around the table, still going to break it down and talk about a little college football action this week. Hampton, glad to be back with you as always.
Yes, sir. Hell, sleet, and snow cannot stop us. And we are back here tonight to talk a little college football. And we're going to give our main takeaway from week 6, like we usually do. And then we're going to preview week 7. We're going to talk about Bama, Tennessee, big game this weekend. Oklahoma State and TCU, the battle of the undefeateds. Michigan, Penn State, another undefeated matchup. Clemson versus FSU, really sneaky matchup with Clemson traveling down to Tallahassee. And then we're going to end the show tonight talking about Mississippi State versus Kentucky. Kentucky coming off a big loss to the South Carolina Gamecocks. Will Levis should be back for this game, but what a win for Shane Beamer and his squad. Now sitting at 4-2 with losses to Georgia and Arkansas. Graham and I both picked them as like that sleeper team out of the East, and they're kind of living up to the hype a little bit. So watch out if they kind of get on a roll here midway to the latter half of the year. But Graham, before we get into that and look forward to week 7, let's look back at week 6 and what a week it was. Tell me your biggest takeaway from this past weekend.
Yeah, the biggest takeaway I had is in the Pac 12. I think as a conference has been in the conversation because of two losses that they've had in losing UCLA and USC to the Big Ten in the future. But right now, those two teams are carrying the Pac 12. Oregon might be in that conversation, but the two best teams to me in the Pac 12 are both in Los Angeles. I mean, UCLA coming off a big win at home against Utah. I think we all thought Utah was, just kind of stunned in their loss to Florida, but would really dominate the rest of the year, especially some of that Pac-12 action where the line of scrimmages seem a little bit soft. But man, UCLA's offense and Dorian Thompson Robinson with Chip Kelly, they're explosive. They are exciting to watch. And USC, we all know what they have. Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams. I mean, you just name it. Jordan Addison. That they've got so many names and weapons. But man, this UCLA team, I kind of trashed them at the beginning of the year, not for any of their football reasons, but they have zero fan support. But man, if they keep playing like they do, the Rose Bowl is going to be packed, and I can almost guarantee that they are exciting to watch. I know they're kind of still the little stepbrother of USC, especially now with the coaching situation with Lincoln Riley coming into USC. But man, the Pac-12, it doesn't seem like Oregon is going to be the dead set winner of the Pac-12. They could end up surprising us and winning that conference. But UCLA and USC, to me, that's going to be a fun showdown in LA in a couple weeks whenever that takes place. Hampton, what's your week 6 takeaway? I'm sure it has to do with the game you attended in Alabama and Texas A&M. But we eked out a win. But tell us your takeaway.
Well, I've got to give a shout out to you before I do that. 2 weeks in a row with great recaps that are kind of outside the norm. Talking about the Big 12 last week. And speaking of the Big 12, Kansas TCU big matchup. TCU goes in to Lawrence, Kansas and wins. Daniels gets hurt, but Kansas kind of puts up a valiant effort. And now that conference is really, really interesting, especially with Texas playing better. They splattered Oklahoma 49-0. Quinn Ewers had that offense going. And that conference is really compelling right now. Really compelling. Pac-12, same thing too. DTR, Zach Charbonnet ran roughshod over the Utah defense, and then USC kind of kept up their winning ways as well. If we can take anything and know that it's going to be gospel, and so Lincoln Riley's going to have a good offense, and he has
Yep.
that again this year in an inferior conference to the Big 12. So them dominating on offense is not surprising to me in the least. It's going to be really interesting to see if they can avoid that misstep that he usually had at Oklahoma, and if they, UCLA and USC both are undefeated at the end of the year. That's going to make for a very captivating and interesting matchup. But we got a long way to go
Yeah.
before that happens. But yeah, for my takeaway for the week, we got to go to Tuscaloosa, and we have to recap the trip a little bit. My dad and I went to the game, had really good seats. Obviously, we were on Bryce watch, whether he was going to play or not. He ran out in warm-ups. He was all dressed, but he did not throw. And it was Jalen Milroe's show. And I want to be very measured in what I say, because I think Graham and I and Chase, when he is on, and Chase, shout out, we miss you. Hope to have you back next week. But we try to be very measured, and I think we have a duty to be fair in our critiques and our criticisms of players, but we don't ever want to trash or disparage a player's name. I mean, they're 18 to 22-year-old kids. They put in a lot of work. They have a lot more pressure than any of us could imagine. So I don't want to do that at all. But I've got to, as the host of this podcast, if I'm going to be honest, I've got to give honest analysis. And the game I saw Jalen Milroe play on Saturday was one of the worst quarterback performances under Nick Saban, maybe since Cooper Bateman 2015 versus Ole Miss, Blake Sims 2014 versus Arkansas, where he did the pogo stick on fourth down on the quarterback sneak. Graham, it was rough, man. It was rough.
It's hard to consider Jalen Milroe a quarterback after his performance on Saturday.
And that is kind of my takeaway when leaving the game, was I did not see many things that could translate to this guy being the starter next year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean that the kid can't develop. That doesn't mean, because all development at any position is not linear. Not everyone progresses the same way. So he could put in an offseason of work, and by the time he comes back next year, he has improved dramatically. His throwing mechanics, the way he sees the field, senses pressure in the pocket. But that was lacking on Saturday night. And I think the most indicting thing was the turnovers, man. The pocket presence was awful, because on both fumbles, and I've heard some people blame the O-line for that or blame Bill O'Brien for that. That's all on your quarterback, because College Football Nerds, shout out to them. They're a really good podcast, do really good work. They were talking about it on YouTube today. On those shot plays, it was designed like they had guards pulling to give Milroe plenty of time. And the way they had it set up was, you look at the first read. If the first read in there, you take off and go. They weren't asking him to do a bunch of full scale, full field reads where you go A, B, C, D, and then go check down. They weren't doing that. They weren't asking him to do that. It was, if the first read ain't there, run. And on two plays, like literally the exact same play, he holds on the ball too long, pump fakes, and then fumbles. I mean, you got to take care of the ball. You got to take care of the ball, especially when that game would not have been close if he merely did not turn the ball over.
Yep.
Alabama wins that game 35-7, 35-10, if he just holds on to the ball. Yep. And you could see Bill O'Brien tried to craft a game plan around what he did well by initiating that one read and go type play, type concept. Ran a couple RPOs, ran some quarterback designed runs with read option. But even on that, and I even noticed this at the stadium, he misread that at times. Like when he was supposed to give the ball to the running back, he kept it. The defensive end or the jack linebacker stayed home, and he kept it instead of giving it to the ball carrier. And I think a lot of it had to do with nerves. I think he was overwhelmed, or it looked like he was. He was very unsettled in the pocket, like from a not happy Pete, happy feet perspective. He was never settled back there. And then throwing wise, he never looked comfortable. He made a couple really good throws. I'll give him credit there. The one to Latu on the touchdown, a little risky, but he fit it in there. That was a good throw. He sat back there on the Ja'Cory Brooks touchdown, the Jermaine Burton touchdown. All three of those were pretty good throws. But all three of those throws are throws that any starting quarterback in the SEC should be able to make.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the game, I mean, the interception he threw, Jermaine Burton, bless his heart, open again by 2 or 3 yards, and the ball is late and it's underthrown and gets picked off. And I think the game was overwhelming for him, and he played a big part in why that game was close. Because I know some Alabama fans were complaining after the game of, this isn't the same old Alabama. Alabama should have throttled them. And Alabama didn't come out ready to play. And I'm like, you didn't watch the same game I did.
Yeah.
Because the offensive line, while I don't think it was their best day, they still did enough where Alabama ran for almost 300 yards with virtually no passing threat, no threat of a passing game. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, another 21 carries for 154 yards, looked awesome. He's really coming into his own. You did all that without him being able to push the ball downfield. And then defensively, every time that Texas A&M had a long field, they couldn't move the ball. But every time they scored 17 points off turnovers.
Yep.
They scored, the 2 fumbles, I think, turned into touchdowns. And then the interception, I think, turned into a field goal, if I'm not mistaken. And if you're playing a better team, that gets you beat. Alabama was very fortunate to win that game, but it was not because of the performance of the rest of the team. It was because the quarterback was not only not executing his job, he was hampering the overall output of the team.
Yeah.
And I want to say this, Jalen Milroe is a great kid. He's got great legs, and that didn't mean everything he did in the game was bad. I'm not going to – there were good glimpses and glimmers of his potential. But he has a very, and I mean capital V, very long way to go before he can be the starting quarterback at Alabama. And I will say this, and then Graham, I'll kick it to you to kind of get your perspective on this game. I know I went long, but I had a lot to say. If Bryce Young cannot go this week, I would not be shocked if Ty Simpson gets a look, because you can't be like, you can make freshman mistakes, but you can't be that detrimental to your team's success. And I think that's what Milroe was on Saturday. I hope with another start, maybe he got the nerves out of him. Maybe he can play more within himself, rely on his training, rely on his coaching and the game plan that they instilled. But what we saw on Saturday was rough, and Alabama was fortunate to win, and I give credit to their defense and that running game for winning them that game. What do you make of all that?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I will take Jalen Milroe. I'll defend him a little bit. When you have legs like he does throughout his whole high school career, I mean, even college up to this point, he has not had to make throws or make decisions with his eyes about throwing the football. He has been if it's not wide open, take off and run. And in high school, they probably didn't even they just probably told him, wait 2 seconds, and it's just everything's a quarterback draw, whether it's designed or not. And so I'll defend him on that aspect. I don't necessarily know if he's had the reps to just build up that mental acuity to have that pocket presence. But that's what it came down to was his pocket presence was poor, especially on those 2 fumbles. I know one of them at least was him stepping up in the pocket, and he just had one hand on the ball, had it loose, and it's whenever you're stepping up in the pocket, you should never have one hand on the ball if you're a quarterback unless you're letting it go. But as you're stepping up into the pocket, you got to know that it's collapsing on you. You've got to do something with it. And so that was kind of rough to see. But Hampton, I'll throw it back to you with this question, and hopefully it'll spur a little bit of our next conversation and a little bit of a recap. Um, if you are a college football coach, would you rather have at quarterback Jalen Milroe or Robbie Ashford?
What a question.
Triple options, what you're
What
saying.
what a question that is. And I cannot believe I'm saying this. I'd have to go Robbie Ashford.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because I think Robbie is probably as effective. Maybe I'd give him maybe a little less effective as a runner just because I think Milroe is more impressive physically and we
Mhm.
know the type of wheels he has.
Yeah.
But Ashford's at least shown that he can throw the ball a little more consistently than Jalen Milroe to this point. And Ashford has more reps. I get all that. But as an Alabama fan, I have to say that. And I know that might be a wild take and I might get flamed for that. But that's how I feel. I mean, even in the second half of that game, Alabama came out, they ran an RPO, and he about threw another pick.
Yeah.
From that point on, it was like Bill O'Brien knew we're not going to put the ball in the air hardly ever again. I
Yeah.
mean, Alabama only ran 19 pass plays opposed to 51 rushing because they knew they had to kind of go in a shell because he was causing that much harm to the offense. So I would have to go Ashford there, man.
Yeah.
And with that statement going in to the game in Knoxville, if he has to play again, that shows you what I would think if Bryce Young does not play in that game. Real quick, what would be your answer to your own question? And then we'll kind of move into the Alabama Tennessee preview.
Yeah. I think I'm with you. I think I take Ashford as well.
I mean, I
I'm
cannot
sure.
believe I said that, but that's
Yeah,
just
I
true.
know. I'm sure you didn't get to watch most of the Auburn Georgia game. Um, I mean, really, there was one play that defined the game. It was the fake punt that didn't work. There was, I mean, we talked about it in our group message. We don't, hate the aggressiveness of the play call of going for a fake punt. But the score was tied and it was the first quarter. Like we're not gonna put all of our we're not putting all of our chips on in on the first hand. I like that's just not how you play. Yeah, it might end up working, but we know that a football game is it's long, it's drawn out. There's a lot of hands that are gonna be played. So you can't full out gamble on your first in the first quarter, especially when the score's tied. Like right now, the score is even. Let's keep playing this because we're doing something right if we're playing even with Georgia. Let's not take any you know wild risk, and that's what they did. And so they kind of put Robbie Ashford in a little bit of a hole. Like they after that, Auburn was always playing catch up, and you know Auburn in the past, Auburn present. You can't rely on Auburn to sit back in the pocket and throw the football. That's not where they're going to be successful. Robbie Ashford, he's got good feet. He's very mobile. Struggles with accuracy at times. As very much of a shortstop playing quarterback is the best way I can describe him. Got a cannon for an arm. Can really throw the football. But man, he struggles on accuracy at some points. And if you're Auburn, I don't know if you've already given up hope. If not, I guess you're just waiting for Harzan to be gone. But I think that we've at least seen the flashes of Robbie Ashford, whereas Milroe, I mean, he was fine against Arkansas, but against A&M, he left kind of bad taste in your mouth of, man, this guy's not going to cut it. And Hampton, like you said earlier in the show, they're 18 to 22-year-olds, and we're not going to base their whole life off of one game. That we are cheering for Jalen Milroe, hoping for his success, and maybe it was just a moment of the nerves got to him and everything else added on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, but it is going to be a question for next year in T-Town whether uh, Milroe is going to be the guy or not. But leading
Or
into Knoxville, I'll go ahead and throw it back to you, Hampton.
okay.
You know, we're talking about could be a great quarterback matchup in Hendon Hooker and Bryce Young if he's able to go. I haven't read the reports, but I think that with him fully being held out against A&M, I think that not Nick Saban ever looks down the road ahead of opponents, but I think he knew that losing to Texas A&M at home is less important than going on the road and beating Tennessee, which will be, Tennessee, great offense. They just smoked LSU. I mean, it was a Cajun, you know, I don't even know what to say. What do you call like a Cajun, barbecue? But that whatever it was, um, man, it was rough for LSU.
Mhm.
Tennessee's legit. I mean, their offense has all the weapons to expose almost any defense. If they start off fast, which they did against LSU, Alabama could be in some trouble because Alabama is not the best at really playing from behind. They do a good job of, you know, controlling the time of possession, controlling, being able to take some shots when they're open, and then running the football aggressively. But man, I think it all comes down to Bryce Young being back. If he's back, Alabama and Tennessee is going to be a really, really fun matchup. If it's Milroe, I probably won't be watching.
Go for a
But
hike.
yeah, I'm gonna go for a hike. Hampton, what do you think? Give us some keys to this game.
Man, I've got plenty. So I want to base my analysis on the premise that Bryce Young is going to play. I believe he's going to play.
Yeah.
I do not believe he will be 100%.
hmm
I will
Don't
go
need him
ahead and
though.
say that.
Don't need him at 100% though.
Don't need him. I look, after what I saw last week, about a 50% Bryce Young
Yeah.
would be welcome after quarterback play that Alabama got last week. But I want to kind of the narrative around this game has been very interesting. And I know Tennessee's hot and they're the new team on the block and they go into Baton Rouge. And I know many people thought LSU was going to win that game.
No.
Neither of us did. I didn't see that at all, other than the fact of you might think, oh, well, it's in Baton Rouge at 11 a.m. and they may be looking ahead. But if you just looked at talent on the field, you knew that Tennessee was a vastly superior team to LSU. And then how the game unfolded, I mean, first play of the game, they fumble on a kickoff.
Yep.
Then they score on that. Then the next drive, they get another short field. Then Brian Kelly goes full brain dead and goes for it on 4th and 7 or something like that when they could have taken the points and stay in the
Yep.
game instead. They don't get it. They give Tennessee more good field position. And very questionable calls were made in that game by Brian Kelly to almost give Tennessee more leverage and more firepower. And then
There
they ended
he
up running away with it.
Yeah,
Go
he
ahead.
he he gave Tennessee the ammo to shoot himself in the foot.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to. But
And
Hampton,
go ahead.
this last thing I'll say about the Tennessee LSU game, we
Mhm.
talked about it last week. Just breaking down that game, and I pretty much said the premise that LSU's not that special at 11 a.m. At the 11 kickoff, that's not where the fans are rowdy. And I think it comes down to this, and it's no shame at breakfast food, but man, whenever the tailgate, terrace, the tailgate squad, whenever everybody that's tailgating is cooking breakfast casserole and cinnamon rolls, that's a losing effort. It's
Mhm.
nothing against cinnamon rolls, nothing against breakfast casserole, but that's not what gets the boys going uh, down in Death Valley. So that might be the hot take of the day. But yeah, I think that's what it came down to.
Mhm.
LSU is not the best team at 11 a.m. and Tennessee, got out hot, and yeah, Brian Kelly sure did, hand it to him on a platter.
I don't think it would have mattered what time they played because
Mhm.
I do not think, at least offensively, I do not think LSU is a very good football team
Yeah.
right now. Jaden Daniels has not played well. He's very much one read and take off. And I just don't, I think they have kind of an offense that's stuck in the past a little bit. They need to adapt a little more spread RPO type stuff. Um, I kind of some of the problems that Brian Kelly had at Notre Dame when they would face superior talent
Mhm.
are kind of creeping up at LSU. So I was not surprised by that outcome. But what I have been surprised by, the narrative around this game, there's been a lot of talk about Tennessee's offense, which is elite. There's
Yeah.
no question about it. They're really, really good. Hendon Hooker is the leader in the Heisman clubhouse, in my opinion. If he wins on Saturday, he will be firmly entrenched in the Heisman clubhouse. They've got weapons in Jabari Small, their running back. They've got Brew McCoy on the outside. Cedric Tillman will not be playing in this game, which I think is a big development.
Yeah.
Really talented receiver for them. But they've got weapons everywhere. Their offense has been really, really explosive. And that's been all the talk is their offense has been really, really explosive, and they're elite, and they're elite, and they're going to give Alabama trouble. And I have no doubt that they will put up points on Alabama. And Hendon Hooker will make plays. That is what good players do. And typically, teams that beat Alabama have a good quarterback, one that is a dual threat that can really throw and throw accurately down the field. The issue and the argument and the narrative, there's not been enough discussion about Alabama's defense, which is number one in the country in many categories. And in my opinion, they're the best defense in the country, especially when you consider that cheetah package, which is going to be heavily employed, if I had to guess, which the cheetah package, for those who don't know, is the 3 outside linebacker package with Braswell, Dallas Turner, and Will Anderson. And it has been near about unstoppable. And the integrity in the pass rush lanes that they have showed in the past 2 or 3 games that they played has been very, very impressive. Along with that, I think Alabama's secondary has been really good this year. Terrion Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry, they've been very solid. No, Terrion had a couple catches on him this past weekend, but I still think he played well. He didn't get burned or anything. Guy made plays. It's going to happen when you're playing corner. Jordan Bow, DeMarco Helms have been very good. Linebacker play has been awesome. I mean, Henry T has played really well. Deontay Lawson has played incredibly well too. And I think the key to this game, at least on this side of the ball, Alabama's defense has to stop the Tennessee run. If they do that and put it all on Hendon Hooker, then I think Alabama is going to have a really good chance of stopping this Tennessee offense. Because when they played last year, that's what happened. Tennessee tried to establish that running game because when they can establish the running game, they can take play action shots down the field, and then they can get that tempo going and kind of wear you out. If they can't get the running game going, it's just a lot of drop back passing. And then if you go 3 straight incomplete, then you're off the field. Then your defense gets worn out as the game goes along. So I think that's the key. Alabama has to stop the Tennessee running attack, put more pressure on Hendon Hooker, and trust that your pass rushing can get home so that those plays that they like to take down the field, those shot plays, he's not going to have time to throw them because there's going to be Will Anderson, Chris Braswell, Dallas Turner in his face. And I think that is the key on that side of the ball. Mm-hmm. And then another thing that I don't think has been talked about enough is when Alabama's on offense versus this Tennessee defense. If Bryce Young plays, which like I said, I'm hearing that he's going to play, a pretty good confidence that he's going to play. Tennessee's defense is ranked 87th in college football in total defense. It's not great. Not great, Graham, especially when they haven't played an elite offense by any stretch of imagination. What the best offense they faced is maybe Florida, with a very limited passer in Anthony Richardson who threw for over 400 yards on them. That's the best he's looked all year, was against that Tennessee defense, which I find very interesting. Along with that, another interesting stat is that Tennessee actually ranked 7th in rushing defense, which that's very eye-opening stat. Mm-hmm. But shout out to my guys in the bunker who posed a really good thought and maybe a reason as to why this is. Because if you remember, Graham, that Tennessee Pitt game, Pitt ran all over them. Mm-hmm. Pitt started running back 21 carries, 154 yards, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. They had success on the ground against them. I think what happens against Tennessee is, like you said, they get off to that good start, they get ahead early, and that forces the opposing team to play from behind and pass instead of really attempting to run.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they get turned into a one-dimensional offense. And I think that's not going to happen with Alabama. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have really good success running the football because I think this offensive line has gotten better and better each week. I'm not saying they're going to run for like 300 yards against Tennessee, but I think they're going to be able to do enough to keep them honest. And then their secondary, which is already missing a starting corner who's out for the year. Now they're missing another guy more than likely who got arrested earlier this week, and they already rank near the bottom in the country in passing defense. I think Bryce Young and this Alabama offense is going to be able to take advantage of that. And when I look at it, I know Alabama's going into a tough environment, and I can't predict how Bryce Young's going to look coming off that shoulder, if he's going to be what percent health he's going to be. I just know based on those factors, if I get an 80% Bryce Young and he's effective throwing the ball, I think Alabama wins this game, and I think there's a potential that they win by 10 to 17 points in that area because I think their defense will be able to stop that Tennessee offense, and I don't think the Tennessee defense will be able to stop the Alabama offense enough to win. So I'm going to pick Alabama to win this game. It's going to be hard fought. It's going to be close throughout, but Alabama pulls it out in the end. What do you make of that real quick before we move on to the rest of the slate?
Yeah, I think you're right. One stat, Tennessee is like 22nd in the country in scoring defense. So I do think they capitalize on turnovers just a little bit.
They do.
Yeah, and so that is beneficial. My perspective of Hampton, what you said about opposing defenses, you know, giving up big plays to Tennessee. I think part of that is when you're behind on defense, you got to start being aggressive. You got to try and force some stops,
Great
force
point.
some turnovers. And so I think that is why, we see we see such big plays, especially towards second half end of games for Tennessee, is that whenever they're playing ahead early, Tennessee, they don't care. They're willing to throw the football. They don't care what time is on the clock. They're willing to air it out. And so, man, I think that's a big reason why. I think the rumors are that Dolly Parton might be the
The
guest
game day
speaker on
picker.
College Game
Yeah.
Day. So so Alabama could be in some trouble with that. But I think this is the most exciting Tennessee Alabama matchup in 15 years or so. And so I think that Tennessee's going to come ready to play. Their fan base is going to be excited. Neyland's going to be crazy. The
It's
spread
going
on
to
the
be
game,
rocking.
yeah,
Yeah.
lots of Rocky Top, which we'll take or leave it. Alabama's favored by 7 points. I don't think they cover that. I think it's probably a 6-point game. I would say Alabama probably wins by 2 field goals to a touchdown. 7 points.
That's too rich for your blood.
It's too rich for my blood, especially after watching Alabama, almost lose on the last play against A&M, which they definitely shouldn't have. But we talked about that. So give me
Mhm.
Alabama probably by 6 points, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be this 50-45 shootout. I think it's probably going to be more in that 30-24 range.
Mhm.
But it is still a high scoring game, but it's not going to be a every drive is a touchdown.
I think since you gave a score prediction, I'm going to go 38-27. That's going to be my
Okay.
score prediction. And it's going to be a fun game to watch. Game day will be there, like you mentioned, and I can't wait. I've not been this pumped for a regular season game in quite a while. Shout out Austin if you are listening. Let's move on to Oklahoma State and the Cowboys versus the TCU Horned Frogs. Really quick, Graham, who you got in this one?
Give me TCU. I thought it was a fluke whenever they beat Oklahoma so bad. Then they went to Kansas. Max Duggan is legit. He's a great runner of the football, and Sonny Dykes has that TCU team turned around in year one.
And it's at TCU, which is very interesting.
Exactly. Yep.
And
TCU there by 4.
favored by 4. And Sonny Dykes has done a great job. Garrett Riley, their offensive coordinator, come to Alabama next year, buddy. We'll maybe have a little Drake May action with you. We'd love to have you. Give me – I'm going to go Oklahoma State, man. I'm going to go
Really?
Oklahoma State. Spencer Sanders has been really good this year.
Yeah.
and I think they get it done. They've had a couple close games in the past few weeks. So is TCU, really. I mean, they had to eke it out versus Kansas. I think it's going to be a hard fought game, but in the end, give me Oklahoma State. Next game, Michigan versus Penn State. This one, I mean, I think this is the first real test Michigan's had all year. It's at Michigan. Graham, do you think Jim
Mhm.
Harbaugh and the Wolverines make a statement? Or do you think Sean Clifford in his 20th year of eligibility gets another big win?
Yeah, I'd like to shout out the Michigan Wolverines, the first bowl eligible team this year. Um,
Come on.
Yep, and so they're playing in Ann Arbor in the Big House. I think Blake Corum running the football is just too good for Michigan. Penn State might give them a little bit of a shake up, but I think Michigan's gonna win this one for sure.
I'm gonna go Penn State. I'm
Ooh,
gonna go Penn State. I think Clifford has played really well this year. I think he'll play well in that intimidating environment he did at Auburn, and I
hmm.
know Auburn's not a very good football team, but that environment was rowdy, and he handled it very well. I think they got a very dynamic rushing attack. Number 10, I believe his name, Noah Singleton, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're going to be able to use those backs and their tight ends to get enough points to beat Michigan. And I like Penn State's defense matching up against that Michigan offense, which has struggled at times. JJ McCarthy has not looked crisp and sharp at all times. So I think Joey Porter and then their linebacker, who looks like a Micah Parsons clone, I think is going to have a big game. Give me Penn State in this one. Another interesting matchup that we're going to talk about: Clemson traveling to Florida State. Florida State is coming off two really close and devastating losses, especially the one this past week at NC State. Graham, do you think Clemson is on upset alert here?
Definitely could be. Florida State keeps knocking at the door.
Mm-hmm.
They keep getting it close. But DJ Uiagalelei for Clemson is playing very well, especially a whole lot better than he did last year. Um, and when you look at it, Florida State's had three really tough games in a row. They're almost having to give everything, and they're still losing. Give me Clemson. I think the talent's just going to be a little bit different there. We hate to see it because you know, we're kind of hyped by Mike Norvell at the beginning of the year after
Yeah.
that big win against LSU, and they started off 4-0, and then they've lost two close games to Wake Forest and NC State. And like I said, Florida State's knocking at that door. They're just not there yet. Give me Clemson on the road in Tallahassee.
Very, very nice. I'm going to ride with the Knowles, man. I've had this circled on my calendar for a little bit. I think they're going to pull the upset. Clemson going into a hostile environment. FSU in need of a big win, in need of a rebound. I think Jordan Travis plays really well in this game. I think they're going to be able to run the ball pretty well with the speed that they have. Johnny Wilson on the outside, that freak of a tight end receiver, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
He's a weapon. That's all I know. And he can play, and he plays really, really well. I think they get enough stops on defense, and I believe the Noel faithful storms the field after the game after a big, big win. Give me FSU. Final game that we're going to talk about here, Graham. Mississippi State now sitting at 5-1, and who in the world said that they were going to be the SEC West sleepers this year? This guy and that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the Paul Rudd, meme. Who would have thought? Not me. Well, I did actually think that they would be doing this well. I didn't think their record would be 5-1 at this point, but that speaks to Will Rogers and this offense being really explosive, not only through the air, but they've got a nice little ground attack too, man. So Will Levis should be back this week. They're traveling to Lexington. Who you got in this one?
Yeah, this is the second big road game for Mississippi State. The first one was at LSU, and LSU kind of put it to them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't keep buying the Will Rogers train. I think that when you looked at the game, Kentucky and South Carolina, yeah, they missed Will Levis. South Carolina dominated that game. I mean, they won. They still scored almost 30 points on Kentucky, which in today's time isn't huge, but I think Mississippi State's going to be able to score 30 or more. And I think it was probably the last time you know, maybe last year, or the year before that. Anyway, Mississippi State won big on the road at Kentucky whenever we thought Kentucky would dominate. I think Mississippi State just has something tough to handle. Will Rogers, Dylan Johnson run the football, like you said, Hampton. That's just a deadly duo. Give me Mississippi State.
And finally, we agree. Yep, give me the Mississippi State Bulldogs, man. I think they keep riding that offensive momentum. I think their defense is really solid. I think they give Kentucky a lot of trouble with Will Levis kind of returning, and their run. I don't think their running game's been nearly as effective this year. I know Chris Rodriguez added a little bit better of a dimension, a little bit more physicality when he came back against Ole Miss, but I still don't think they had that all the way sorted out. And I just trust Mississippi State right now. I think they get a big win, and then they go into Tuscaloosa next week, sitting at 6-1, and a big game on the horizon. That's going to be another big matchup for Alabama. It doesn't get any easier after Tennessee. So give me Mississippi State, and I think I may be wrong. I think they win by 10 points or so. I think it's not
I
going to
can
come
see
down
that.
the wire. I think they make a statement win. And Mike Leach, year 3, Mike Leach is a thing, man. At every place he's going, year 3 is kind of the year where they take that leap. And the same's happening for Mississippi State this year. So that will do it, I think. Graham, you got anything else to add for that you're looking forward to this week? Or are we ready to get on up out of here?
We can go ahead and get up out of here. But I do think Mississippi State, there's a chance they go in by 10 to 14.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Kentucky go to Ole Miss, and Will Levis didn't show anything special. They struggled to run the football at times. And Ole Miss doesn't have that dominant defense. They're a whole lot better this year. Not a game wrecking defense that should be able to stop Kentucky running the football. I think Mississippi State's going to learn from that, and I think they're ready to capitalize.
Can I ask you a question real quick, Graham, before we wrap it up?
Sure.
I know there's been a lot of talk about Will Levis being the number 1 pick in the draft, top 15, top 10 pick. Are you buy? I mean, you and I both are big Will Levis guys. We liked him last year. I like him this year. But do you buy that number 1 pick, top 15 type guy? Because I
No.
sure don't.
Definitely not number 1 pick. I mean, you're telling me Will Levis is going to be better than Bryce Young, Will Anderson, C.J. Stroud.
No.
No, I don't think so. One of those 3 guys is going to go number 1. Will Levis can sneak into the top 15 depending on how quarterback needy some of these teams are. But to me, he's one of those guys I think he's 20 to 32. I think he's a late first rounder. When I see him, he looks similar to Kenny Pickett, less running ability, but
Good
kind
comp.
of the same throwing style. But it's also hard to tell. Kentucky just they don't help quarterbacks out much. I think it's too much of a pro style scheme, which in college it's not always the most successful.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to add to that, I think they miss Liam Cohen, their
Mm,
offensive coordinator from last year, big time. I thought he was very innovative, had some interesting personnel groupings and schematic approach of how to attack a defense, a lot more motion. He really knew how to utilize Wandale Robinson.
mhm.
And I don't see that from Kentucky as much this year, but also their O line's not as good. But Levis, his decision making at times is very questionable to me.
Yeah.
I don't think he has great pocket presence per se. I think there's some things he definitely needs to work on. I don't think he's worthy of that number 1 pick or even
Mm,
really top 10. I just
no.
want to get your opinion on that. I've been meaning to ask you and thought now was as good a time as ever, man. So
Well,
glad
now you
we're
got
aligned
it.
on that.
Now you
Huh?
got it. I said, now you got it.
Now I got it. Now I got it. And now you got it. And we appreciate you listening to us tonight on the Pigskin Cafe as we recapped week 6 of college football. We're halfway through, which is heartbreaking and awesome at the same time because we're really hitting where the men separate themselves from the boys. I mean, this weekend is Separation Saturday, man. We're going to find out who's for real, who is not, and we're going to have a much clearer picture of the college football landscape after this weekend. So we cannot wait to watch it and then recap it next week like we always do, and hopefully have Chase back for that. But if you're new here, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Pigskin Cafe. We have gotten a lot of great feedback over the past few weeks. Our video with Jimmy Stein, who did an excellent job, is our highest rated podcast ever, which
Well,
is awesome. We appreciate all your support with that. So if you're new here, hit that subscribe button, leave us a like, leave us a comment on what you think, what you're kind of looking for this weekend, and hit that notification bell so you know anytime a new video of ours comes out. Be sure also to go follow us on Instagram and Twitter to find out any information we have on shows coming out, any polls we got going on, and just to be part of the conversation. We love interacting with everybody that listens to us. That's always kind of a fun thing to see people who listen to the show and be able to talk to them and get their thoughts and their perspectives. So be sure to do that. And we will be back next week. Like I said, recapping week 7 and looking forward to week 8. But the Pigskin Cafe is closing for now. But until next time, chew on that.